sorry for the delay because I have a meeting during noon. So yeah, the meeting is an important meeting. So sorry about that, and thank you for waiting me. So let's start with the slides. We haven't had a chance to introduce on this Tuesday. So in this Tuesday, we talk about C fundamental rights, and then because I think the sound of the fan is a bit annoying, so let me try to turn off that. Okay, it's much better now. So let's continue. So this Tuesday we talked about we have variables, right? And we can use variable to store data. And variable have different types. And different type of the variable difference in many ways. For example, we can compare the variable with the type float and int. And the float variable have a larger memory size compared to int because float need to store more digits, more numbers. And so now we know the concept of variable. The next thing we need to know is how we can use variable in our C code. So first thing we need to know is that when we want to use the variable, we need to declare the variables before we use them. So what is declare? So declare in Chinese means 宣告. So we need to declare, we need to let the rest of the programs know that now we have this variable, and after we declare it, we can use this variable. So, how to declare a variable? To declare a variable in C is pretty simple. You just need to write down the line look like this. So let's try to analyze this line. So first you can see we have the type of the variable and the name of the variable. So when we want to declare a variable, the first thing we need to do is to specify, is to tell the computer what is the type of the variable. So these two lines, the word that's in the red box indicate the type of the variable. And then after we indicate its type, then we need to provide the name of the variable. So the words in the blue box are the name of the variable. So here, in the example here, we have two variables. The first variable named height, and the type of this height variable is int. So it is an integer variable. Then we have the next variable. The name of the variable is profit, and the type of this profit variable is float. And then one small detail here, although it's small but it's important, is that after we finish the declaration of these two variables, always remember to add the semicolon at the end, because one declaration is one statement. And in C, every statement needs to end with a semicolon. So we need to add a semicolon here. So this is the first example of how to declare these two variables. And then let's check out the example here. So this is another way of how we can declare multiple variables at the same time. So if we want to declare several variables, and we know that these variables have the same type, then we can combine their declaration together. So you can see that I have 4 variables here, and all these variables have the same type int. So I can write a declaration like this. I only need to write down int at once, and then I use the comma symbol to separate the name for different variables, and then I end it with a semicolon here. So this is the same for the second line. In the second line, I have 2 float variable, profit, and loss. And I can declare them at the same line. I just need to use the comma symbol to separate them. And then I only need to write one float to indicate the type of these two variables. So we have finished declaration for the variables. The next question is how can we store data into these declared variables? So to store the data into these declared variables, we call this action assignment. So we need to do some assignment. So here is how we can assign value into the declared variable. So this is the line in the blue box here. And you can see we have the equal symbol here. And then we put the value we want to store in the variable at the right. And then we put the name of the variable at the left. So we can store the data like this. And since the profit is a float variable, so we can store the floating point value like this. And in C, if you want to be more precise about, you want to tell the computer that this is the float variable, then you can add F at the end. And the reason we want to do that is that in C, we have another type of the variable that we can also store the floating points data into. So that type of the variable is called double type. So, but we will introduce double type in the later lesson. But for now, we only introduce float type. And to tell the C that this value is a float type, not the double type, one of the way to do that is to add F at the end of the floating point number. And one important thing is that first, please don't assign the value to the variable that you haven't declared. So always declare first and then do the assignment. The second thing is that please make sure that you assign the correct type of data to the variable. So what does this mean? So that means that if the type of the variable is int, please assign int value to the int variable. And if the type of the variable is float, then please store the floating point number into float type variable or the double type variable. However, actually in C, because C is a very permissive language, right? C allows you to do almost everything you want to do. So actually you can write the line like this. So what happens in the last line is that you can see we have a height, but we know that the type of the height variable is int. But what we're trying to do here is that we assign a floating point number. So the floating point number is the number that have the decimal points, and then we have the number after decimal points. So this kind of number in programming language, we will call it floating point number. So what happened here is that we're trying to assign a floating point number into an integer variable. So you can see the type of the data and the type of the variable are not the same, right? So when these things happen, we will say this is a mixing types because we mix two types together. And this is not good in C for the most of the time unless you are really clear about what you are doing right now. But I will say for the beginner, please avoid doing this. And we can also, so in this example, we assign the number to variable. So we will say we assigned constant to variables. So constant here means 常数 in Chinese because we directly write down the number exactly on the code. So when we do that, when we write down 8, 12, 100, 1000 directly in our code, then those numbers will become constant. So we can, of course, assign constant to variable. But we can also assign a variable to another variable. We can also assign a result of an expression of a calculation into variables. So we can see that in the last line here, we have the variable called volume, and we want to assign the results of this calculation to volume variable. So inside this expression, we have 3 variables, and then we use these multiplication operators to multiply height by length and by the width. So we can calculate the final results and then assign the result value to the variable volume. So this is one thing we can do. So we will call these formula and expressions in C. And in the expression, we can contain variable, constants, and operator. So here I can just quickly show you guys about what kind of operator you can use in C. So if you write down the star symbol here, the asterisk, then the meaning of this symbol is multiplications, 乘法. And then you can have the plus symbol here. So plus symbol represents the addition operations. So you can add one number to another numbers. And similarly, if you write down the minus symbol here, then this is subtractions. You can subtract one number from another number. And then we have a divisions. So division in C code look like this, the slash. So you can divide 10 by 5, the result will be 2. So here I just want to quickly show you about this arithmetic operator. But don't worry about that. We will have a more complete introduction about this operator and expression in the later week. We have 1 week that we will focus on expression. Okay, so now we know how to store the data in the variables, and when we know how to do the calculation, now let's learn how to use printf to print out the current value of variables. So here is the example of how we can print the value stored inside the height variable. So here we need to declare the height variable first like this, and we can actually initialize the value at the same time. So we assign 10 to height. Then I use a printf to print out the value stored inside height. And this is what the outcome looks like. So let's check out the detail inside the printf. So the first thing you might notice is that inside the printf here, inside the string here, we have the %d, right? So what is the meaning of %d? So the %d is a placeholder. So you can think about this is a mark in the string here. So this mark tells computer that where is the value of height is to be filled in. So that means that we can put the %d in the place that we want the value stored inside height to be printed out. So we can put it here. So that is why in the output, we can see the value of height, that is 10, right? So 10 appears here. The location of the 10 is the same location of the %d in the string of the printf. Okay, so the next question is, if we change the printf from the previous slide into this slide, so now printf look like this. You can see I changed the location of %d. So if I have this printf, what will be the output? What is the correct output? So this slide is to test whether you understand what I just said. And please remember, put down your student ID, only your student ID when you submit your answer. Because we will calculate how many times you answer Slido at the end of the semester, And based on the count, we will give you different bonus points. So we will wait until we have 30 submissions. So what is the correct output if we have this printf? We move the %d from here to the beginning of the string. Okay, we only need 6 more. And I will show the results. Okay, we reached 30. So let's check out the results. Very good. So over 80% of the submission choose the correct result. So yes, because we moved the %d at the beginning of the string, so the value of height should appear at the end, at the start of the string. So this is the correct answer. So not this one. This is the answer. This is the correct output for this printf, but this printf is not the same. Okay. So now let's check out more information about %d. So why we want to use %d? So the reason is that for C, when we use %d only for printing the value from integer variable. So that is why we need to have the %d, okay? So actually D is short for decimal number. Decimal number in Chinese is a 十进位. But you will learn more about, we have the %o, something like that. But for now, we will stick to the decimal integer value. So the thing you need to know, you need to remember is that when we want to print out the value stored inside int variable using printf, what we need to put inside the string of the printf is %d. Then, what if I want to print out the value stored inside the float variable? If we want to do that, we need to use another %, that is %f. So, this is the example of how we can use the %f inside the printf to print out the value stored inside the float variable. And by default, if we only write down the %f, it will display the number with the 6 digits after the decimal point. So, but 6 digits is too long, right? Because, for example, you can see that in this profit float variable, what we store inside it is this floating point number here. And in this floating point number, we only have 4 digits after decimal points. So decimal points is the dot here. This is the decimal point. Then the digits after decimal points is the digit that I highlight here. So we have 1 digit, 2 digits, 3, and 4. So we have totally 4 digits after decimal point for this floating point number. And because I don't want to print out so many digits after the decimal point, so one way to change what we print is that we can actually add values inside the %f. So we can change the %f to another way. That is, we can write down the %f look like this. So we can add the .2 in between f and the % symbol. So we will get the %.2f. So this .2 and .4 means that how many digits you want to display after decimal point. So that is why if we have these two printf look like this, the output of the first printf will be look like this. So only 2 digits after decimal points will be print out. Because in this printf, what I put it here is %.2f. And in the second printf, I put out %.4f. So so we will have a 4 digits after decimal points that will be printed out for the output for the second printf. So in the previous example, we only used printf to print out the value from one variable at a time, right? However, actually there's no limit to the number of the variable that can be printed by a printf. In this example, I can print out the value from height and length, 2 variables at the same time in the same printf. The only thing I need to do is to add 2%d here. So the reason why we need to put the %d is that the height and length are the integer variables. And then after that, we can put the name of the 2 variable after the string for the printf. So we put the height and length here. And also, we can also use printf to print out the value of any numeric expressions. So here is the expression we explained in the previous slide, and we know the outcome. So what this expression will return is the final results of these calculations. And then we can also use the %d to print out the final result of these calculations. So the value that will appear in the second printf will be the value that we get by multiplying height, length, and width. Okay, so here is another practice, but we already run out of the time. So I will not let you do the practice in the class, but I will highly recommend you to finish this small exercise after the class by yourself, or you can finish it during the break. So what you need to do is to click the link here. So this link will take you to the online GDB we introduced in the previous class. And please copy the code and then pass on the IDE on your computer, and then follow the instruction here, and then try to fulfill the requirements in the comment here. So I believe most of you can finish it in like 2 minutes or 3 minutes. It's really simple here. The purpose of this practice is to let you write the printf by yourself and let you to try to know how to do the simple calculation between different variables. Okay, so actually this is the summary for the fundamental 1, but today our plan is to finish fundamental 2. So what I'm gonna do is to continue the fundamental 2 slide. So quickly recap what we learned for the fundamental 1. We introduced our first program, Hello CCU. We also introduced the general form of a program. We introduced 3 features, and then we introduced the importance of adding comments on your code. And then we talk about the concept of variables and assignment. And we talk about how to use printf to print out the value from different variables. So let's start with the fundamental 2. So at the beginning, there's another Slido quiz because I want to make sure you guys understand what we taught in the fundamental 1. So the question is like this. So please choose the correct statement. And what I want this statement to do is to print 2 integer value from the integer variable x and y. So if I want to do that, what is the correct printf statement that can help me to do what I want to do? And again, we will wait until we have 30 submissions. Oh, really quick. So we already got 30. Let's check out the results. Very good. So over 90% of the submission choose the correct answer. So that means that you guys are really paying attention to all the small details here, right? Because you can see that in these options, the double quotation is in the wrong place. The double quotation mark should be here, because in the first part is, so this is the string, and the variable we put after the string should not be included in the string, okay? Great. So that means that you guys are ready for more things for the C fundamentals. So this is the outline here. So the first, what I will introduce is how to read the input from users. So in the previous slide, we already know how to print out the value from the variables. So now what I'm going to introduce is how we can read the value from outside and then store inside the variables. And we will talk more about the printf and then how to initialize our variables, and we will talk about different directives that can help us to define the name for constant. And then I will talk about some concept about identifiers and I will say the good layout for C. What kind of the layout you should have if you want to write the C code. So to read the inputs from our computer and store in the variable, we use this function called scanf. Okay, so scan means 扫描. So yeah, so you can imagine that's why it's called scanf, because you want to scan the input from us and then store the input value to the variable. So scanf have a lot of similarities with printf. So this is the scanf here. So what the scanf do is that it will scan the input from the user and then store into the integer variable I. So first, what scanf need is a format string. So we have a string here, and inside this string, we need to tell the scanf what is the expected appearance of the input data. So the expected appearance is more like we need to tell the printf what is the type of the data that I'm gonna input. So now we know that's why printf and scanf have the f at the end. So actually the f for these two functions stands for formatted. So that is why we will say this is a format string. So what the meaning is that these two functions, printf and scanf, need format string to specify the shape of data. So that is why if we saw the string content %d, %f, or the other things, we will call this string a format string, because this format string can specify what the input string or what the output string will look like. So that is why we have the formatted, the abbreviation for formatted for printf and scanf. So for the first printf, I believe most of you already know what is the meaning of the first printf. The format string for the first printf tell the printf that the output data is a 2 integer. So that is why we have 2%d here. And for the format string for the scanf here, what this format string tells scanf is that we tell the scanf the user of this program is gonna input an integer data. So that is why we use %d, because if we expect the user will input floating point value, if this is the case, we need to use %f instead. But in this case, we expect the user to input integer value, so that is why I use %d. And then after that, what the scanf will do is to read this integer data and store the read data into the integer variable I. So that is why we put the nen, we put I here, so I is the nen of the integer variable. And some of you might wonder why in the scanf we have the AND, this AND symbol here. Because in the printf we don't need to have the AND symbol in front of the variables, right? But in the scanf we need to put this AND symbol. So in C, when you use the scanf, this AND symbol is usually, but not always, but is usually required when using scanf. So you will always see that we have the AND symbol here in front of the variables in the scanf. But it's actually pretty hard to explain why and the meaning of scanf for now, because this AND symbol is something related to the concept about pointers. But the pointers, we will introduce the pointers at around the end of this semester. So if I introduce the pointer right now, you guys will want to drop this course. So that is why, please just remember, for now, just remember whenever you use scanf, please always remember to add this AND symbol in front of the variables. So that's the rule of thumb you all remember right now. And please don't worry about that. We will clearly explain why in the later weeks. Okay, so let's move from the integer to the floating point. So for the scanf, if we want to use the scanf to read the floating point value, we just do the same things with printf. So we can put the %f here. So what the %f will do is to tell the scanf that the expected input value is the floating point number. So it will have the float format. So the float format means that the input number may contain a decimal point, but doesn't have to. For example, the input data will look like this, 9.1, so the point is the decimal points. So we can do that, and we can store the floating point value into another floating variables. So that is why we have x here, because the type of x is float, so x is a float variable. However, maybe some of you will think that, oh, okay, %f can read the number with the decimal points, but it can also read the numbers without decimal points, right? So why not? Why? So maybe I can just use %f for all the situation, right? But that is true. But please remember, computing floating points, floating variable is much slower than computing int variable. So if you use the float variable for all your programs, and you even use the float variable for the place that you only use the integer part, then your program will be really slow. So I will not recommend you to do that. Please still use the integer variables when you need, and only use the floating point or the float variable when you really need to do. Okay, so we have another slide. So we have a lot of slides here because I want to really make sure that you guys understand what I'm talking right now and give you guys more chance to get the bonus points, right? That's a good thing. So please remember, again, put your student ID and only your student ID. Okay, so please choose the most correct statement for the line 16. So the line 16 is here. So what the line 16 want to do is to use the scanf to read a float value. So this is what you just learned, right? So how to use scanf to read the float value and then store it into the float variable input. we will wait until we have 30 submission. Yeah, we have it. Okay, very good. So around 80% of the submission choose the correct answer here. So yes, because this is the float value, so we need to use %f, and we need to add the and symbol in front of input. Input is the float variable we want to store the read data into. Okay, so if you choose this one, yeah, we don't use input. Input is not the name of the function. We need to use scanf. Okay, then the next question is related to the previous one. So what is the printed message if the input value is 0.123? So the appearance of output is determined by the format string and the printf in here. So can you still remember what happened if we have 0.3 inside the %f? So what will be the printed message, the entire printed message from this printf? Okay, again, we have 37 submissions. Let's check out the results. Very good. So please don't forget, in the format string of the printf, we have output, the name here, the words here. So the correct message is this one instead of this one. Okay, very good. So what you can see is that for the printf, we always need to add the format string inside the printf. So the format string is the string we have at the beginning of the printf. So let's talk more about the format string here. So the format string will actually contain two kinds of things. So the first kind of things inside the format string is ordinary characters. So that is the characters I label in blue. So in the example code here, you can see I label something in blue, right? The /n, the profit, the dollar symbol here. So all these things are called ordinary characters. So they are just characters. However, we also have some characters that are in red, right? So the characters in red, in this case, we will call those things conversion specifications. So I know this is a new word, but please try to remember this word, conversion specifications. So the meaning of conversion specification is that it will tell the computer how to convert this value into the desired printed format. So that is why we have a conversion. And because we tell computer that this is a specific printing format, so that is why it is called specifications. So altogether, it is called conversion specification. I know it's a hard word, but we will use conversion specification for a lot of time in this course, so please remember this special term, special norm, that is conversion specifications. So when I say conversion specifications, what I mean is all the things that begin with the percent symbol characters. So the %d, %f, %.2f, %.2.3f, these things are all conversion specifications. So conversion specification can help us, usually conversion specification represents the value to be filled in during printing. So this conversion specification will let us know what kind of the value should be filled. So if we put %d, d tells the computer that when I print this value, I should print it as an integer value. Then similarly, %f tells computer that when I print this value, I should print this value as the floating point value. So the information after %, that is the d or f, d and f tell the computer how the value is converted to printed form. So d tell the computer I should convert this value into the integer value in the printed form. So now let's check out the other kind of the character we can have in the format string for the printf. So the ordinary character is a simple one because this ordinary character will be printed as they appear in the string. So if the format string in this printf is look like this one. So what this program wants to do is that I declare a bunch of different integer and float variable, and I assign different value to it, and I use this printf to print out the value from all the variable I have. So you can see the word, the character includes all the ordinary characters. So you can see I have I, space, equal, and then another conversion specifications. So you can see the I space and equal symbol appear as it showed in the format string for the printf. So this is what ordinary character will do in the format string. Okay. So when we use the printf and the format string, the most important thing is that we need to check whether the number of the conversion specifications, that is the number of the %d or %f in the format string, match the number of the output variables. So we need to check the number of the % we have in the format string match the number of the variable we have after the format string. So after knowing this, I want to invite you to think about why the following codes of the printf, these two printf, why they are wrong. Why they are wrong. So if you understand the meaning of the first line and understand what I just said, you should be quickly identify or know why these two things are wrong. Okay? Okay, I see a lot of people like nodding their head. So yeah, so I think probably you are right. So why is wrong? So for the first printf, the problem is that there are too many conversion specifications, right? We have two conversion specifications, 1%d, 2%d. However, I only have one integer variable after the format string, that is I. So in this case, the value of I will be printed correctly, that's okay. However, we still have another %d. So what the C will do is to try to print out a random integer value for the second %d. But actually, that is not the thing you want. So although you can still run your programs, but your program will print out something that you don't want. So please try this online GDB, and you can see what happens if you have this printf. Or maybe you can try it right now. So let's run this one. And you can see you will get the warning message from the compiler. So please don't just skip the warning message. Warning message is also important. So the warning message is actually clearly tell you what happened in your code. But if you check out the output, you can see the first value is the value we store inside I, so it's printed out correctly. However, because we have another %d, but there's no second variable, so in that case, C just print out a random and meaningless value. So that is not the thing we want. So let's check out what happened in the second printf. So the problem in the second printf, the printf here, is that there are too few conversion specifications compared to the number of variables we have. So we have I and j, we have two variables after the format string, but we only have one conversion specification. So what happened here is that printf will print out the value I, but it will not print out the value j. So it is okay, but if you want to show up j, then you cannot use this printf because j will not be printed out. Okay, so let's take a short break. So please come back here after 5 minutes.